Good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Judith Santmeyer, and I am the Chief Operating Officer at the Ohio Child Care Resource and Referral Association. And it's my great honor to welcome you to the 2020 Early Childhood Higher Education Summit. On behalf of the Planning Committee, our state sponsors and partners, I appreciate this time to spend with you over the next few days. What we would like to start out with is a bit of a poll question to see who is represented here on the call. And so we'll use our poll here. And so that I ask that you select kind of which area in our field you represent. All right, so on the call so far, we have the majority being child care resource and referral. We also, about half. We also have a third at higher education institution. We have state agencies, child care programs currently represented, and then we also will have career tech education joining us throughout the 3 days as well. So we feel that, this is, all of these audiences are key to the complexity of our field as well as meeting the needs of the students. Thank you for doing that. What we'd like to do is start out with just some of the key of summit logistics and Zoom navigation. Since many of us have been working in this pandemic time, Zoom has been a pretty common platform, but just want to review some of those quick common items that we'll be using as a part of the 3 days. One of the things that we have embraced with this virtual summit is the idea that we could expand the number of sessions and also include presenters that maybe we would not be able to include in a one-day event. We will also be using the same Zoom link each day, so there's no need to worry about different links for different days. It's all the same link. And so we find that will kind of help us through this process. This year also a first for us is the concept of an on-demand session. So the resources for conducting remote teacher observations is located on OKRA's website, and I have also put that location in the chat box so that you can refer to that session when you can. I want to send a thank you to Chad Nunemaker and Kathleen Bryan for between the two of them, and I think Chad on the technical side, they wrote, produced, and directed that on-demand session, and we think it's very relevant to the current times, and hopefully you will find it very valuable. As you find, we are in webinar mode for the Zoom, so all attendees are in a listen-only mode. We will be using the Q&A box quite a bit. So that is the way that you can engage with panelists and presenters. I will be kind of help facilitating that Q&A. So as they're presenting and there are pauses in the presentation, we'll be able to review those questions and get them answered. So I encourage you to do that so that we can make the most out of our time together. Also with our navigation, we will have the opportunity, again, if there's chat, for items. That's a way that you can definitely engage with your fellow participants as well. And then if you have the need to answer the questions, that's in the Q&A part that I've already shared. We also will be sending out a summit evaluation. As this is the first time that we are embarking and embracing our virtual event, we welcome the feedback for session topics, ideas, ways that we could make the summit better. And so we will be sending that out with a SurveyMonkey link to complete that. So we do encourage you to do that. I know on behalf of the committee, we do spend a decent amount of time reviewing all the feedback that we receive, kind of analyzing that, looking for emerging topics and trying to present those so that they are the most relevant to you. And then finally, the session recordings will be available at the summit, after the summit. And so those will be posted to that same link, the 2020 Higher Ed Summit link, so that you'll be able to view those afterwards as well. I would like to start off with some thank yous as well. So thank you to our partner sponsor, Ohio Head Start Collaboration Office. Anita Armstrong is our committee member and leads that effort. And so I appreciate her partnership. Without their assistance, we would not be able to offer the summit free of charge to participants. So kudos to them. We do appreciate their support. Also, a big round of applause, virtual applause, of course, but thank you to the Summit Planning Committee. These folks work year-round to provide the planning, coordination, and execution of this event, as well as the subcommittee efforts year-round. So without them, we wouldn't be able to accomplish this event and others. So thank you so much. So taking us to, and for those of you that have been with us at prior events, we still have a very common vision of what we hope to accomplish through these activities. And it's a clear educational pathway and seamless transition from entry in the field through a baccalaureate degree will be available for early childhood educators and teach scholars whose goal is to teach and/or support the education of children birth to third grade. So as you know, we have a very complex field, and so having things that having the system be a seamless transition and moving them along the pipeline of through, and it may be at different entry points through baccalaureate is challenging, but we are up for the task. Our Higher Ed Summit subcommittees include articulation, community and shared voice, and core knowledge and competencies. And so you'll be hearing a little bit later in our CDA session from the articulation committee and their efforts around trying to get those transfer agreements and pathways solidified for the CDA. For our core knowledge and competency work, we continue to look at those. We've also been keeping close tabs on the national efforts as well through Power to the Profession. And then with our community and shared voice, we also look at the aspects around the power to the profession, what are emerging topics, and what might we want to communicate and share among the early childhood field. Would also like to touch briefly upon a few workforce efforts that are also occurring. The Higher Ed Summit was born out of the Teach Early Childhood Ohio project, currently a program in our state. And through the T.E.A.C.H National Center, they offered some planning grants. It was about 7 years ago, where articulation and this concept of where do we go next and how do we impact the statewide component. So I would like to talk a little bit about T.E.A.C.H and kind of where we are with that movement as well. And then we'll hear from the Department of Job and Family Services, who is our statewide funder, a little bit more about T.E.A.C.H later this afternoon. We'll also touch on a statewide project which is moving the needle on compensation, also through the T.E.A.C.H National Center, and provides us with the ability to talk about those compensation issues that we know exist with our current workforce and the low paying wage, and how do we improve upon that, build the educational focus, and then reach forward for those compensation that is so desperately needed. And then finally, our Power Ohio wage supplements. So we do have those in our state, and being able to provide some of those supplements to those working in the field. So first is Teach Early Childhood Ohio. We administer that here at Okra, and it is a scholarship program that provides a CDA assessment fee, associate and bachelor degree scholarships. Currently, there are over 20 states that administer T.E.A.C.H at a statewide level, and the program is very rigorous and includes multiple items for fidelity around competencies as well as monitoring activities. And so they're really looking at T.E.A.C.H being a convener in each state to talk about workforce-related issues, ensuring that students are continuing along their educational path. We're excited to share that in fiscal year 20, T.E.A.C.H Ohio had over 1,000 scholars. So that is amazing with the state and local dollars that we have. What's unique to T.E.A.C.H is that it is a three-way partnership. So it includes the scholar, the student that's going to school, their employer. So it is a requirement that those scholars are working in the field to be eligible for T.E.A.C.H scholarships, and T.E.A.C.H Ohio. The scholar and employer have an agreement with T.E.A.C.H Ohio, and the scholar is agreeing that they're going to complete their coursework, complete their contract, and when that occurs, they will also stay at their employer for 1 year as they continue on. The employer is agreeing to pay a portion of the scholarship, as well as supporting the scholar through release time. And then T.E.A.C.H Ohio is taking the bulk share of things like tuition, books, and a travel stipend, and helping with release time as well. So it takes all pieces for this partnership to work. So with our scholarship components, it is a comprehensive scholarship. So you just heard me speak about it. It includes things like tuition, books, release time, a travel or internet stipend. So those items are all encompassing of those pieces. We also include the general education classes that you're required to achieve your degree as well. So all of those pieces and support are included in that. You'll see here from our slide that the comprehensive scholarships is one of the what they call 5 C's. So we also have the college education, so they're obtaining the coursework. The compensation is a raise or bonus that's a part of the commitment. T.E.A.C.H pays a portion of that, as well as the employer. So they're building upon that wage component that's so needed. Commitment. The scholar is agreeing to stay if it's a CDA at 6 months. If it is a college credit scholarship, it is a year. So especially with the college credit scholarship, as they continue on to say year 2 of their contract, they're completing the first year of commitment. And then as that keeps going, as the contract moves forward, then their years of commitment do as well. And then finally, our counselor. So in our state, we are so fortunate to have 4 counselors to help serve the population. And with that, they are able to be that coach for them to move forward in their educational journey, as well as in some cases, their tour guide as well. So if you can imagine, many of our T.E.A.C.H scholars are working professionals. So many of them have not been in higher education. And the majority of them don't even have someone in their family who has a degree. So there just isn't context around attending higher ed, how to manage those systems. And so the counselor is one of the resources that they have available to them to help them through that process. T.E.A.C.H also builds. So between our T.E.A.C.H scholarships and workforce development scholarships, there is support for training, as well as the CDA assessment fee, associate degree, and bachelor degree. And we have had scholars who have continued on that path and worked on all 4 of those elements. So we do appreciate the fact that we are moving folks through that progression. So when we then take a look through the higher education lens and where we engage with higher education, there's several aspects of that. So one is the T.E.A.C.H Advisory Committee. We have a committee that is comprised of state agencies, higher education, both associate and bachelor degree, and prior T.E.A.C.H scholars, as well as current program administration. So really trying to get a well-rounded committee that will help advise us on different policy components, how we might meet things around some of the competency pieces, and really keeping a pulse on kind of those workforce issues that we're working through. I will say, and kind of put an ask out there as well, that we are looking for a bachelor degree representative. So if that is you out there, please let me know, because we would like to include a 4-year representative. We meet 3 times a year. 2 of those are virtual on Teams meetings. And 1, of course, we have tentatively scheduled for June as a face-to-face, but we'll see where we are then. You know, we don't know in these current times. But I think it is an excellent way to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the students and faculty. We also complete scholarship outreach. And so you'll hear me talking about this concept of cooperating schools. So we have schools that have an agreement with us to be kind of a T.E.A.C.H institution. And there's things like, you know, the ability that we can see grades and those pieces. And so we work with those schools on outreach items as well, just to make sure that we're getting the word out there as best we can. We're commonly mistaken for a different scholarship program called Teach America. And so trying to make sure folks have the right information is what we're trying to achieve. We, of course, have the Higher Education Summit and subcommittees, and then our annual 2- and 4-year college profiles. And so I will also put an ask out there for our higher education folks on the call that process and our next round of those profile updates is starting next week. And so I please encourage you to complete the surveys. They're very useful to not only us to understand the landscape of your programs, but it is a valuable tool for potential students as well as they're looking for schools for their needs. We also, as a part of T.E.A.C.H National, are working on a project called Moving the Needle on Compensation. And the vision for that project is that early childhood educators are compensated commensurate with their education and equivalent to teachers in the public pre-K to 12 system. And every time I present this information, I typically get the question of, and how are we going to pay for that? And with that, it's a vision statement of where we need to go and how we anticipate with some of those pieces about the how, and we know the why for sure, but we still are working out pieces as far as getting that to a comprehensive nature. This year we worked on specific goals around the wage supplements, building a communication public policy plan, also working with the Ohio Office of Workforce Transformation. So if you haven't seen the information about the top jobs through the governor's office, I encourage you to do so. Early childhood is highlighted there, so that is great news to hear. And then looking at funding sources as well. So with that concept of top jobs and critical occupations, we may see some resources around the workforce investment boards and looking at other types of options in that regard for things like training. And finally, just a little bit on Power Ohio wage supplements. You'll hear a little bit more about this in our next session, but just wanted to share that we do have wage supplements existing in our state. We currently have 1,200 active recipients. They select either CDA or associate degree, and the concept is that once they reach those milestones, they receive payments, as well as once completed, there's 6 and 12-month retention payments. And of course, they can be used together with T.E.A.C.H Early Childhood Ohio scholarships. So it's really for those that are needing to complete those items, a way to truly use those benefits at the same time and coordinate those. So at this time, I'll pause for questions if there are any. And go ahead and if you haven't and you have questions, type those in the question and answer box. Okay, it looks like we're doing so far so good. No questions at this point. And I do have my contact information at the end of this slide. Feel free to contact me for, T.E.A.C.H Ohio, Power Ohio, compensation type questions, and of course, any summit questions that you have during these 3 days. I'll be happy to help and get those questions resolved for you.